Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Suit Up, where today we're going to be taking a look at the latest frame offering released in update 18.5, the Egyptian-themed Inaros. Now, Egyptian mythology is something that's always interested me, way back from when I was a kid to growing up, so when it came out that Inaros was Egyptian-themed, there was much excitement from me, especially since DE said he was going to be completely different from any other frame we've had before. So what exactly is different? Well, with a base health of 2,200 at rank 30, it's pretty obvious he has the highest base health in the game, and with a base armor of 200, it's definitely in the top half of that as well. Definitely meaning he is supposed to be a very sort of, I guess a face tanky frame is what I call it. However, this insane base health and reasonable armor is offset with the fact that he has absolutely no shields whatsoever. So as you can imagine, mods like redirection are going to do nothing, as well as the fact he can't receive overshields. Now the rest of his stats, 150 energy at rank 30, and a sprint speed of 1, they're fairly average to be honest. They aren't really anything to shout about, so looking at his stats is all going to be about that insane base health and very good survivability. So how does his abilities tie into this? Well, fairly well actually, especially when you consider one of his passive abilities, which is that he will regain 20% of his health for each hit that he does with finisher damage. Now, the finishers can be from Radial Blind, or as part of a melee combo, however, ground finishers do not affect this. He does have a second passive ability as well, which is that when Inaros goes into his bleed out state from losing all of his health, he enters his sarcophagus. Now, while in this state, he can drain life from surrounding enemies to fill his revive meter and allow him to revive himself if the meter is filled. Now this passive is always active, so you can do it in solo play. However, really tough enemies, such as things like high level bombards, high level heavy gunners, stuff with a lot of armor, can be extremely hard to drain. And often, more often than not, you will bleed out before reviving in this situation. So bearing that in mind, Inaros' passive to regain life on melee finishers, his first ability is Desiccation, where Inaros will send a wave of sand in front of him, staggering all enemies in front of him. Now he will deal 150 damage on the hit, then a small tick of 8 damage for 8 seconds. But the most important part of this ability is the fact that it opens up enemies to melee finishers, meaning that on every enemy that's hit by this ability, he can regain health from each finisher done, meaning that he can not only use this as fantastic crowd control, but can be also fantastic for his own survivability. Now, combining this ability with something like a covert lethality dagger is definitely the best way of using it, and something that can not only be used for great regaining health really well, but also a key factor in Inaros' high level play, if modded to really bring out the best in this ability. Obviously, range affects the range of the ability, stun duration and dot duration is affected by duration, and so a high range, high duration build can stun a lot of enemies for quite a while, allowing for very cheap, very effective spammable crowd control. Now his second ability is another one that's based on health regen and survivability, which is Devour. Inaros will sink an enemy into quicksand, rooting them into place. Now while this alone can be good crowd control, it's what can be done afterwards that is the main feature. If Inaros is close enough, he can interact with the enemy, devouring them, dealing 250 damage a second to that enemy, and converting it into health for Inaros. But it's more than that, because it's not just Inaros that can devour the target. Fellow Tenno can also devour them as well, converting the damage into health and shield for themselves. But there's another part to the devour ability as well, which is that if you hold down the power button, it will latch onto the enemy at range, 50 meters by default, and drag them towards you, which is huge, before devouring them. So doing this from a safer place than trying to devour mid-battle is a pretty good idea. However, if you're in the animation of Devour, you are completely invulnerable. So once the enemy is devoured by either Inaros or an ally, it will convert the enemy into a sand shadow, acting essentially as a spectre at that point, lasting for as long as it took to devour them in the first place. Now the only thing about sand shadows is Eximus units cannot be made into shadows, they will simply disappear. Now to be honest, the AI for sand shadows is still not the smartest, so to be honest the main feature of this ability is to regain health from devouring enemies either by yourself or by your allies. However, this really synergizes well with his third ability, Sandstorm. And no, I'm not going to do the meme, don't worry. Inaros spins himself around with great speed, lifting up all enemies and mods or resources in a 15-meter range, doing 500 damage a second to them, with enemies that collide with terrain taking additional damage. While in this ability, Inaros is 50% slower, but also takes 50% less damage. Now, to be honest, Sandstorm's not that complicated an ability. Much as you would expect, range is affected by range, damage by power strength, and since it's a channeled ability, both duration and efficiency affect it. However, the best thing about Sandstorm, apart from the very effective crowd control, is that it can offer very, very good synergy with Devour, which is that any enemy that is rooted in place with Devour will automatically be devoured whilst in Sandstorm, and turned into a sand shadow that way, meaning that you can leech health, plus create a load of sand shadows at once, when you combine that with Devour and Sandstorm at the same time. The fourth and final ability is Scarab Swarm, where Inaros will summon scarabs that converts his health into armour at a rate of 29 points of health for 1% extra armour. So you get a total of 2900 health lost to be able to fully charge the armour to 100%. Where you will literally double your armour value, so you get 400 armour at full charge, or 620 with steel fibre. This on its own is a pretty decent buff to survivability, especially with the amount of health regenerating abilities he has, plus the amount of raw HP that this armour has to work with, but he can also discharge part of that 100% charge, which is 25% each time, to launch Scarab Swarms at enemies, immobilising enemies, and dealing 200 corrosive damage per second over 15 seconds. Any damage done by the Scarabs will be given back to allies within 15 meters of the enemy. The ability will also spread from enemy to enemy within 5 meters of the affected target, increasing health gained back and damage done by the ability. So as you can imagine, once again, no weird and wonderful modding here. Range affects range of the ability, radius of the heal, damage by power strength, and duration by duration. Nothing really strange or weird and wonderful here. It's another very simple ability, but hugely effective, provided you're going to use it in the right situations. In groups of enemies, you can get a silly amount of health back for both you and your allies in a very short amount of time, really making Inaros a fantastic team-based frame. Okay, so let's move on to starting to mod Inaros. Now, he does come with a bunch of polarities as standard. It comes with 2 Ds, comes with a dash in the aura, and he comes with a dash in the Exilus. Now, the first thing I did is I removed the dash in the Exilus because I don't really like it there. I also added 2 Vs and a dash. Now, this is pretty much my standard build, my everyday build. So we've got Steel Viper and Vitality for the survivability, Rage and Prime Flow, which is going to give us basically unlimited energy. And the reason why I haven't put any efficiency on here whatsoever is because that insane health pool plus Rage and Prime Flow means you're never going to be out of energy anyway. So that is definitely not a bad way to do it. We've got Transient Fortitude and Intensify for power strength for all of our abilities. Stretch, which is going to give us extra range on, again, all of our abilities. And Prime Continuity, which is going to help with the duration on things like the first ability. So that is definitely going to be a very good sort of all-round build. We've got Cunning Drift as well on here, which is also going to help with that extra little bit of power strength, power range, in fact. Now this is more my my Sandstorm build. If you're going to build for a very sort of crowd control-y Sandstorm, I've got Corrosive Projection up here. I've got Power Drift for power strength, which is going to work with Transient Fortitude. We've also got Stretch on here, which is going to increase the range of the Sandstorm. Prime Continuity and Streamline, which is going to help bring down the cost. Since it is a channeled ability, bringing down the cost is definitely going to be something that's useful. And then once again, the survivability mod, Steel Fiber Vitality, Prime Flow and Rage, in fact. And then Power Drift, which is going to give us that extra bit of power strength. And the third build is definitely a sort of spammy first ability build, designed for covert lethality daggers. So again, I've put Corrosive Projection in there. That could be also Energy Siphon, Prime Continuity and Constitution for increasing the duration of the stun. Stretch and Overextended, which is going to give us the very, very nice range on the actual ability, as well as Cunning Drift. Going to give us max range. Streamline, which is going to help cast it a bit more often. Prime Flow, which is going to give us a pretty decent reserve of energy for when, you know, we pick up energy orbs from killing enemies. And Vitality, just for that extra little bit of, I guess you call it buffer, just in case you do actually get shot at. And then Speed Drift, which is going to give us a little bit extra speed. Closing enemy distance between enemies is even better. And also that extra little bit of casting speed definitely really helps. So what do I think of Inaros? Well, personally, I think he's an absolutely fantastic frame that people right now are seriously underestimating. It's been a long time since I could build a frame 3 very different ways to really bring out the best in certain abilities. And to be honest, each of these abilities are pretty damn good. I've seen people complaining about the scalability of the damage from Inaros. And while I can sort of sympathise with that a little bit, I don't necessarily agree that the lack of scalability kills the frame, as I've seen some people try and argue. But his utility as both crazy amounts of crowd control, with all 4 of his abilities, combined with the ability to heal not only himself, but also heals, spread heals around the team, provided they are reasonably close to him. The thing about Inaros is that most of the time, the damage is more of a sideshow. It's an addition to the crowd control that he has. Damage on most abilities drops off quickly. It's utility that makes a frame amazing. Loki with Disarm, Nova with M Prime, Mirage with Blind. The list goes on of frames where the damage drops off quickly, however their crowd control makes them absolutely key members of any high level run, any endurance run, which is where personally I find the true test of whether a frame is good or not comes into play. And you know what? Inaros aces this. His first ability alone makes him fantastic for any endurance run, especially when you combine that attack with, the ability even, with a covert lethality dagger like the Karist or the Sheath, because it doesn't matter if the enemy is level 200 or level 2000, provided you can complete a finisher attack on them, you will still kill them, making Desicate one of the best scaling abilities in the game, without question. The frame design team at Digital Extremes has been really working overtime recently to make the new frames as new, as innovative as possible. And honestly, with Inaros, not only have they passed that with flying colours, but also the art and the design team absolutely knocked it out of the park with this one, especially that Anubis helmet. I knew I had to have that as soon as I saw it. It is fantastic. The choice of Zero Shields, it was a bold one, and not something I ever thought they would do, but they gave him enough life-stealing tools to go along with the Life Strike and things like Winds of Purity that we already have, to make him one of the tankiest frames in the game, without resorting to cheesy invulnerability. Inaros has made face tanking the sorties a whole bunch of fun. And you know what? He has immediately cemented himself as one of my favourite frames, alongside Equinox, alongside Nyx and Ivara. The quest for him, I really enjoyed. I thought it was pretty fun, with some very good lore implication for the game. He is definitely well worth getting and maxing out. He's a ton of fun, especially combined with gear that really complements his abilities. So as always guys, many thanks for watching, and I shall see you in the next episode.